The time is now 7 o'clock, and I am reconvening to open session and calling to order the regular Board of Education meeting for Indian Prairie School District 204 on Monday, November 4th, 2019. Jackie, please call the roll.
Ms. Donahue?
Here.
Ms. Grover?
Here.
Ms. Deming?
Here.
Mr. Rising?
Here.
Ms. Peel?
Here.
Mr. Razak?
Here.
Mr. Karubas?
Here.
We are all in attendance. Ms. Peel, would you lead us in the pledge?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we start out with some board salutes. Ms. Deming, please.
Waubonsie Valley Junior selected for All National Honor Ensemble. The board salutes Waubonsie Valley Junior Meyer Sethi, who was recently selected for the All National Honor Ensemble by the National Association of Music Education. Meyer is a percussionist in the Waubonsie Wind Ensemble. He earned the top percussion audition score in the state as a sophomore, and this fall earned a position as the drummer in the top Illinois Music Education Association District 9 Jazz Band. The All-National Ensemble's performers represent collaboration and creativity in its highest musical form. Meyer is the first student in Indian Prairie history to participate in the National Association for Music Education All-National Honor Ensemble. Congratulations, Meyer, on this stellar achievement. That's great, very nice.
Ms. Donahue.
The board salutes Fry Elementary art teacher. Oops, is that? The board salutes Fry Elementary art teacher Joan Mills, who was selected as the recipient of the 2019 President's Award by Illinois Art Education Association. Joan is an art educator, artist, and advocate for the arts and art education. She serves the Illinois Art Education Association as the professional development coordinator, providing a wide range of programs for thousands of art teachers across the state. Each year, the current president selects one outstanding member for recognition of their exceptional statewide service. This year, Joan was chosen for this recognition. Congratulations, Joan.
Thank you, and Mr. Rising.
Mattia Valley Senior nominated for Pacemaker Award. The board salutes Mattia Valley Senior Noel Smagala, who was recently nominated for a Pacemaker Award in the Interactive Graphic category by the National Scholastic Press Association for her article, Stimulated Problems? Stimulants Cause More Harm Than Good. Noel is one of 10 students in the United States nominated for this award. Congratulations, Noel, on this wonderful accomplishment.
Right. And now we move to our student representative report. Today, it's presented by Mattia Valley High School, and we have Brooke Pegues with us. Sorry, Brooke.
Good evening. My name is Brooke Pegues, and I am the Class of 2021 Executive Board Representative for MV Student Government, and I'm very excited to join you all tonight. On October 31st, Mattia held the annual Project Soapbox Public Speaking Celebration. This event is hosted by the MICVA Challenge and is a youth-driven civic engagement event that calls on area youth to speak on issues that affect them and their communities. And a special shout out to one of our fantastic judges in the room, Mr. Razak. Treble performers performed at the Illinois American Choral Directors Association Fall Convention on October 25th. Congratulations to those hardworking girls. Our fall play, Figments, will be presented this weekend, November 7th, 8th, and 9th at 7 p.m. Break a leg to all of our performers. I would like to recognize Dr. Natalie Johnson, who received the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. Congratulations, Dr. Johnson. I would also like to recognize Senior Noel Smagala, who was nominated for the Pacemaker Award in the Interactive Graphic category. She is one of 10 students in the United States nominated for this award. Congratulations, Noel. That is all I have for the November board report. Thanks, everyone, and until next time, go Go Mustangs.
Thanks, Brooke. No one has signed up for public comment today, so we're going to move to our superintendent report and consent agenda. We always start with Dr. Sullivan.
Okay. Parents will soon be receiving information on how they can provide feedback about their school on the annual statewide Illinois 5 Essentials Survey. So this survey is designed to create a detailed picture of the inner workings of our school as it relates to the important elements of school effectiveness. And on behalf of the State Board of Education, the Illinois 5 Essentials Survey is administered entirely by the University of Chicago, and it's online. The state provides survey results for individual schools only if a school has at least 20% of parents take the survey. So we would greatly appreciate it if parents could take a few moments when they receive the information to complete the survey. So keep an eye out on your email as the details will be shared later this week. We want to congratulate our own Kathy Peel, who was reelected. She's looking funny at me. You were reelected Vice Chair of the Executive Committee of the DuPage Division of the Illinois Association of School Boards at our fall dinner meeting on October 30th. Did you think it was something else? You weren't sure? No. Yeah. And finally, Thursday, November 15th, is School Board Members' Day in Illinois. And since there isn't another school board meeting before that date, I'm going to take this time to thank the Indian Prairie board members for their service to the district and to the community. As you know, being a school board member requires a significant amount of time and commitment, most of which I'm sure you had no idea that you were getting into when you decided to run for this volunteer unpaid position. And I know there are days that you probably question just a little bit why you signed on for this job, but we know from research that highly efficient and effective school boards that focus on the things that matter have a positive impact on student achievement in a district. And so I'm proud to work for a group of volunteers that have committed to be that kind of school board. And District 204 students, family, and staff are very fortunate to have you leading this great district. So happy School Board Members Day.
Well, thank you.
That's it.
And now we move to the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve consent agenda items D through G as presented.
I move that the Board of Education approve consent agenda items D through G as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Jackie, call the roll, please.
Mr. Carubus?
Yes.
Ms. Peel?
Aye.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Ms. Deming?
Aye.
Mr. Rasak?
Aye.
Mr. Rising?
Aye.
Ms. Grover?
Motion passes. We're now moving to our action items. For the next several items, we'll be approving or not Illinois Association of School Board resolutions. This school board takes the resolutions very seriously. Mr. Rising represents us and represents the opinion of this board at the delegate assembly. This year, we had quite a bit of discussion over several different resolutions. So we'll be taking many of them individually. I will first ask for a motion. The motion will generally be, whether you approve or not approve, it will take the stance of the Illinois Association of School Boards, and then we will decide whether to vote yes or no. After a motion is taken, then I'll ask Mr. Rising to very briefly just review the resolution for us. And if there's any questions, we can have that discussion then. So let's begin. So the first one is I need a motion to approve the Illinois Association of School Boards resolution of do adopt for IASB Resolution 1 as presented.
I move that the Board of Education approve the IASB Resolution Committee's recommendation of do adopt for IASB Resolution 1 entitled School Safety as presented.
Second.
There's a motion second. Mr. Rising.
Yes, so we had a pretty good discussion last time about this. But just to summarize, this was a resolution that was submitted, and actually, let me back up, Mike, again, because I think it's good for clarification that we just explained this process. So, resolutions are submitted by school districts across the state. Resolution committee looks at it, which is made up of the different regions of all the school board members. Each region has a representative, and they present resolutions in front of all the school boards for the state of Illinois. If these resolutions are adopted or not adopted, if they are adopted, they become position statements for the Illinois Association of School Boards, and those are the positions that the Illinois Association of School Board attorneys lobby for at the state and legislative level. If legislators were to come to them and they were discussing a bill at the state level, they would ask the opinion of the Illinois Association of School Boards, and that would be our position statement. So, as far as resolution number 1, this is a resubmission of a resolution that was submitted last year from Mercer County, downstate Illinois, that essentially their resolution is the Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and advocate for legislation which provides local school boards the option of developing student safety and protection plans, which allows voluntary district employees in any capacity the ability to carry a concealed firearm on district property. And there's some other qualifications, while relatively minimal. They have to have a FOID card, they have to have a certified Illinois concealed carry license, and complete any additional training that the boards so desire. They went through a long discussion about this, and at the very end, the recommendation of the resolution committee was that the Illinois school boards adopt this resolution. So I'll just open it up for conversation.
Okay, I wrote my notes here like I did last year. So I'm not going to repeat all the words I said last year when the same resolution came up for vote, but I do need to say something besides just voting no. Schools are one of the safest places in our country on any given day, and we're creating an entire generation of young people who fear being in them. Despite police officers' extensive training and familiarity with high-risk and life-threatening events, the evidence shows that they do not shoot accurately in crisis encounters. It is likely that teachers would be far less effective. Research has shown that there have been at least 65 different reported incidents of guns being mishandled at school since 2014 by teachers or security personnel. There's extensive research showing that students of color are punished much more severely than white students for the same infractions. Arming that bias with a gun is frightening. All major teachers, principals, school employees, school security organizations oppose guns in schools except when carried by a police or security officer. We can't let risky ideas like arming teachers dominate the debate on keeping our schools safe. Put simply, an armed teacher cannot, in a moment of extreme duress and confusion, transform into a specially trained law enforcement officer. In reality, an armed teacher is much more likely to hit a student, bystander, or be shot by law enforcement than to be an effective solution to an active shooter in a school. We should instead pursue an evidence-based intervention plan that addresses what we know about school gun violence. We require professional licensed staff to perform critical roles in our schools, such as school nurse, social worker, teacher, yet we are ironically debating allowing an amateur who lacks extensive professional certification to carry a weapon capable of killing our students. I strongly vote no on this resolution and hope, Mark, that you will once again be very vocal regarding our opposition at IASB during the conference in the next few weeks.
Other comments or discussion or questions?
just reiterate, it's not evidence-based. I think you said it beautifully, Lori, so thank you. It's not evidence-based practices. And I do understand why the rural districts want to have a solution to their issue of response time. But I truly believe, start with hiring a resource officer at their schools. And putting locks on doors like we talked about. There are so many other things to go to first that make a lot more sense.
Susan?
I think Lori stated it beautifully. I'm not going to reiterate and, made comments last year and comments last week, but I strongly would like to see us not support the recommendation that has been given to adopt. And I would like Mark, as Lori said, to share our feelings regarding this very strongly in a couple of weeks.
Others?
Well, so I'll agree with what's been said. As you guys know, I took a lot of your words that you gave me last year and spoke out strongly against this. But I think it's important to reiterate here is that we have empathy for Mercer County and the time it takes for responsiveness for their first responders. But that does not necessarily mean that, well, we don't believe that just anybody that has a FOID card and a concealed carry license should be carrying a weapon within a school. Virtually every group associated with education and law enforcement is against teachers carrying or staff members carrying weapons within a school. Teachers unions, principal unions, police unions, SROs, school social workers, and school psychologists. But not only that, the level of training that school resource officers have to have, first of all, they have to be licensed police officers, but not only that, they have to take 10 different classes, from child and adolescent development and psychology, to implicit bias, to de-escalation techniques, to mental health and physical and behavioral health needs of children. I mean, the level of training that these SROs have cannot be replaced. And to me, and especially what has happened recently in our community in Aurora, there should not be people carrying guns that are unknown to police if there would be an unfortunate event in the school. So I will be voting against this, against the recommendation, and I would be happy to speak on behalf of our board November 23rd.
Others? Hearing none, Jackie, call the roll, please.
Wait, can we make it clear?
Yeah, we need to make it clear.
Yes.
Yeah, just make it clear that we approve the IASB's Resolutions Committee recommendation, and their recommendation was to adopt. So if you support their position of do adopt, you will vote yay. If you disagree with their position of do adopt, you will vote no or nay, okay?
Mr. Carubus?
No.
Mr. Rising?
No?
Ms. Donahue?
No.
Ms. Grover?
No.
Mr. Razak?
No.
Ms. Peel?
No.
Ms. Deming?
No.
So the motion to support is not approved. We will go to the second resolution that we talked about, and that's Resolution 3. So I need a motion that the Board of Education approve IASB Resolution Committee recommendation of do adopt for Resolution 3. It's the School Safety Grant Program.
I'll make a motion the Board of Education approve the IASB Resolution Committee recommendation of do adopt for IASB Resolution 3 School Safety Grant Program as presented.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Rising, you want to review that resolution?
Yep, so in summary here, and I sent you guys a lot of information on this, and some emails that went back and forth and discussions with Ben Schwarm at IASB. Essentially, what this resolution states is that it's a Illinois Association of School Boards advocate for creation and funding of a school safety grant program at the state level that would assist school districts in hiring school resource officers or school security personnel for the protection of students, staff, and SROs. So essentially, something that already exists, but it's now creating a funding and grant program. In addition, essentially, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but in addition, school security personnel may also include off-duty law enforcement officers or a law enforcement officer who has retired within the previous 5 years. And these security personnel may carry a firearm in a school if they continue to receive the same ongoing training as an active police officer and a school resource officer. So I'll just leave it open for discussion.
I guess I have a clarifying question. Mr. Karubis, at the last meeting, did raise some concern about the wording of the resolution and whether it might include school personnel. I think you did some research on that also. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so I initially had reservations about this resolution. It mentions school security personnel, and then it talks about school security personnel may include, and the question is, will they include other people? There is some confusion on what was negotiated and agreed to at the resolution committee to try to clarify what the resolution was. And I believe after discussing it and reviewing it, I think there's a better way to present this so that it is clear. If a resolution is amended in the resolution committee, I think presenting a revised one where we could see the changes and edits rather than a paragraph at the end, which is trying to interpret it. Is the paragraph at the end actually amending the resolution, or was the resolution already amended? So I think I'm comfortable supporting this resolution at this time. I think we need to present an alternative to Resolution 1 from a political standpoint in the Illinois Association of School Board. The vote at the General Assembly is based upon each school district in Illinois having one vote, and there's approximately 850 votes. So it performs kind of like the U.S. Senate, where a district of our size in students and revenue does not have a greater voice, vote in this assembly. We, as a point of contention, we pay dues to the association based on our attendance and our budget, but our voice in the General Assembly does not accurately reflect the amount that we contribute. So I would like to see if we can push for a change that would be a middle ground, where maybe there's different representation of or weight at the resolution committee level. So I think if we support this Resolution 3, that would provide an alternative which tries to meet the needs of rural communities for additional safety, but not go to the level of Resolution 1 of arming teachers.
So, just for clarification on this, I've talked to Ben twice about this one. You know, essentially, last year when we gave our abstain to Resolution 1, you know, we basically said in there that if we as school board members really wanted to have an impact, we would be advocating for legislation to find funding sources for SROs, because that was their argument last year for Resolution 1, that they couldn't afford an SRO. So Wheeling School District here made this resolution. I don't know if they were listening to us or not, but you know, in Ben's response to me, and he even had it in writing in one of the emails too, that he said that, you know, and this should be clarified too, that currently right now, people think this is amending a current, or this is a position of IASB to amend a current law in Illinois. The current law in Illinois states that a SRO, or a school resource officer, can carry a firearm currently in a school if they want to. I mean, that's the current law. So what this proposal suggests, and what Ben wrote, is that if a district does not have access to an SRO, it could hire an off-duty policeman or recently retired policeman within 5 years, as long as they continue to receive that training that an SRO has. So while I think the language of may include is poorly written, I think we should maybe suggest new wording next year. But again, remember, it is just a position statement for IASB to lobby the state legislators. To me, this is a safer, more acceptable position than letting anybody carry guns within our schools. So just wanted to get that clarification.
Other discussion? Ms. Grover?
So I do have an issue with the may include. I would have liked it to say school security personnel are defined as off-duty law enforcement officers. Because with the Resolution 1, you know, we were looking where it said voluntary district employees in any capacity. And we were looking at that and saying, you know, that definition could include anyone. And we were really looking at the wording of things. So it does, that may include does affect me. And I understand what they're saying, and it's a middle ground, and I agree that we should have SROs, and this is a great thing. But when IASB, who has an attorney, is looking at the resolutions, I would think that they would be really cognizant of language that's used in there, and so that's why I have an issue with that may include language.
Well, and from what Ben was telling me, because I said the same thing to him, and I said, our board just feels like it's poorly written. And he's like, well, you have to understand though, he's like, right now, some of those areas can't afford, like for instance, let's say, you know, Naperville, you know, some of those areas, they can't afford to give a policeman during the day to a school to be an SRO. And right now, the way the law is written, that has to be an on-duty officer that serves as an SRO. So they've got, so as according to the state law, there's no option to hire an off-duty police officer or recently retired police officer. So that's why I think the wording was the way it was, like it may include, because right now, a school district, we couldn't get somebody that's off-duty. They'd have to be currently on duty working for the police department to serve as an SRO. So I think that's why they did the may include, even though I still think it's poorly.
So if you look at the last paragraph, I think some of the confusion that I was trying to mention is, how does that last paragraph amend the actual resolution? So the committee supported the premise of the proposal, but suggested revisions to the original resolution, especially in the areas of SROs. SROs are specifically defined by state statute and must be referred to differently than other school security personnel. Also, only SROs are allowed to carry firearms in schools. So why is that included in the resolution committee's comments and recommendation paragraph? Did that amend the resolution by saying school security personnel can't carry firearms? Is that just a statement of law? Hey, school security officers, school resource officers are the only ones allowed to carry guns, and that's just the way it is, and then this resolution would change that law. So I think the lack of clarity that we're struggling with here
Would advocate for them to be able to change that law.
is the fact that we don't specifically know how the language of the resolution was changed at the resolution committee. All we have is that little paragraph. And so from that extra paragraph, we've spoken with a number of people trying to say what went down. And I think we've gotten to the point where my concern was that it may include other people.
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
And I don't think that's the
what I'm saying,
case.
As defined as.
Right.
Would have been the best.
So I think I don't think that's the case.
But wordsmith is everything. I mean, wording is everything.
You got a bunch of attorneys up here that are talking to each other, sure.
But again, I will.
So we're waiting to see
I
who
will-
wins.
Again, I will reiterate, this is only a position statement for IASB. This is not a law for the state of Illinois. This is a position that the IASB attorneys would take to say that an SRO may also include a off-duty law enforcement officer or law enforcement officer who has retired within the previous 5 years, as long as they continue their training. So,
So Grover, how would you support this?
So I think I am not familiar with the amending process. So can you, like, how does that work? Like, if we send it back, when does it get amended? Can you approve the amendment? Or, like, if you say yes to this, what's to say there will be an amendment?
Well, right now, what if we support subject to, or we support in concept, but we need to see this? I mean,
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with supporting it if it says school security personnel are defined as off-duty law enforcement officers, and that there's no may include, because it doesn't mean like a teacher or, you know, like a crossing guard or.
well, I think the fact that they would have to, that it specifically states that they can only carry if they continue receiving the same ongoing firearm training as an active police officer, I think that would negate those other positions because they never had it or wouldn't even qualify for it.
So during the course of this, I just want to make a point of clarification. I'll go to you, Kathy. At our last meeting, we had one of the reasons why we have so many resolutions, generally, we have one or two we talk about, we have 6 or 7 that we're talking about. And part of the issue was, I think, some of the writing and some of the inconsistency. So I don't know if we have to convince each other. We don't have to have a vote that's unanimous. There might be some disagreement here, which is okay. I think each side has valid comments. Ms. Peel?
I was just going to bring up the first time I put a resolution together for polling, getting it as a day off. My proposal, as was submitted, was published. And the final proposal was supposed to be edited and altered according to the committee. And they did not do that in the publication. And it suffered the rejection at the General Assembly. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, that is part of the problems with the way the Delegate Assembly is putting these resolutions together. If you're making a compromise, that's the way it should be read in our committee report. And so I'm just putting that out there. Things have failed before because of that situation, because our proposal, as it was supposed to be, passed overwhelmingly the following year.
I found this writing to be very ambiguous, and I just was not comfortable in supporting the committee's recommendation to adopt if I don't know specifically what the resolution will ultimately read. And and I'm bothered by the may. I would think that if there was a thought process to rewrite or some type of compromise, then why wouldn't that have been presented to us to vote on in the final version? That's what concerns me. When would the final version occur?
Sure. Other comments? Mark, do you want to help us what we're voting for?
Yes, so the resolution number 3, if we were to vote yes, we would agree with the resolution committee's position of do adopt to allow those other people to carry a firearm. If we vote no, we would not agree with the resolution committee's recommendation.
Are we ready to call a vote?
Yeah.
Jackie, call the roll.
Mr. Rising,
Yes.
Miss Deming,
No.
Miss Grover,
No.
Mr. Karubas,
Yes.
Miss Peel,
No.
Miss Donahue,
No.
Mr. Razak,
Aye. The vote is 3 to support, 4 not to support. The board's stance is to not support Resolution 3. We now move to Resolution 4. So I need a motion that the Board of Education approve IASB Resolution number 4, School Safety Police Force as presented.
I'll make a motion the Board of Education approve IASB Resolution Committee recommendation of do adopt for IASB Resolution number 4, School Safety Police Force as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion? I'll start with Mark.
Yeah, so essentially, this is a very unique one, and I questioned Ben numerous times on this too, because to me, this seemed like a local problem. This was specifically submitted by Peoria School District, and the purpose of it is that the IASB shall support legislation that would allow any school district who previously established a professional police force to reestablish a police force with all the duties and responsibilities of local law enforcement agency. To my understanding, this is unique, and Peoria is the only school district that has what is considered a professional police force as determined by the municipality. So, because of that, this is totally specific to Peoria. Because Ben's response was the fact that there is a law that allowed Peoria to do that. We also have to take a position that allows Peoria to continue to do that, because if we say no and take the position as a school board, then Peoria essentially doesn't have a police force. So this is something that IASB needs to support because it's a state law, so we have to support it too.
Comments or questions?
I
I don't
I
think
get-
we should have
I'm-
to support it.
Yeah, I'm confused by
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, go handle it some other way and not through IASB.
I mean, it's a local action, but, so if we vote not to support, how does that, I don't
They
understand.
basically need our support because in order to qualify for an SRO, for instance, right? So if Peoria wants to have an SRO that under current law states that they can provide that through this professional police force, they need us to continue to support them in that, or else that would disqualify them from their local police force.
These are IASB positions, so they're not
No, it's just
legally
a position,
binding or
no.
whatever, so
Yeah,
why,
it's
I
just a
mean, why
position.
pollute our
I know, that's what I said to Ben too.
stuff with something so specific?
That's what I said to Ben. I said they should be taken to this local, to the
Yeah, what-
local legislator.
Sympathy.
Yeah, locally, why can't they
I know.
handle that?
That's, and his response was that because it was a previous law, that, it must have been the deciding factor at this point.
Doesn't make any sense.
Do our attorneys at the table have any explanation for us?
I'm gonna be a no.
What I find interesting, though, is if you compare number 4 to number 8,
Right.
IASB is taking two separate inconsistent
Yeah.
positions. In number 8, it says, we do not support this because it's local.
Yeah.
And in number 4, they're saying we support it, and
it's
it is local. So,
Yeah. And I was just wondering, is there, does the IASB have a position statement that exists that would say it would be against this? It doesn't, right?
No,
So,
they don't.
okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Jackie, call the roll.
Wait, clarify again.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
if we vote yay or yes, we are taking the position of the resolution committee to adopt to allow the IASB support of legislation that it would allow any school district who previously established a professional police force to reestablish a police force with all the duties and responsibilities. If we say no, then we do not support that.
Jackie, call the roll.
Mr. Rising,
Yes?
Miss Peel,
No.
Mr. Rasak,
No.
Miss Grover,
no.
Miss Donahue,
No,
Mr. Carubus,
No.
Miss Deming,
No.
There's one aye, 6 noes. We do not support ISB Resolution Number 4, School Safety Police Force. Now need a motion that the Board of Education approve Resolution Number 7, School Board Elections, Seating of New Members as presented.
I move that the Board of Education approve IASB Resolution Committee's recommendation of do adopt for IASB Resolution 7 entitled School Board Elections, Seating of New Members as presented.
Second.
Motion and second, Mr. Rising.
So basically, this is, essentially, it was interesting because I got some more clarification on this because I was confused at first. So this is a position or resolution for IASB to support legislation allowing newly elected school board candidates who have been elected uncontested to be sworn in or affirmed at the next regularly scheduled board meeting or special meeting held at least 14 days after the consolidated election. I found out that this is actually, because I'm like, why is the rush? What's the big deal, Okay, I understand that they weren't uncontested, but why, So I did a little digging, and I found out that there is a new law under, it's Illinois 105, Illinois Code Statute 51016. Essentially, what this is doing is it's allowing our language, which says it has to wait This resolution is aligning to the current state law that they changed to be able to swear in somebody earlier only if they ran in an uncontested race. So it's essentially aligning to current law that's at the state level. But again, it's just a position statement, so I don't think it's gotten to the school board level yet. It's more, I think, municipality elections. I don't think it's at the school board level, so I don't think they've passed it for school boards at the state level yet, if that makes sense.
So,
School boards, in other words, still have to wait, but other elected positions don't because they changed the current state statute for that. So if it comes up, then IASB can say, yeah, our board members support, if it's uncontested, to swear them in earlier.
Questions? Ms. Peel, you look confused. Are you okay?
Well, yeah, I'm still a little confused. I'm just about ready to just say, let's just do this. I can't think of a problem with it. The actual thing of putting people in, they weren't contested, you might as well, but
What if I don't want to give up my seat?
so you can see a problem with it. So it's a current board member wants them to wait 28 days. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let's say the prior board is very contentious, disagrees with you a lot, and they don't want to leave. They want to stick around to vote against you a couple more times. And then there's an,
Or maybe they want to get something done before the new board comes on. Yeah, okay.
and there's a 10-year time frame for their for their board. I mean, we know when your board seat ends, and even though it's just a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, that's just because someone gets elected that was uncontested, that shouldn't nullify the current member sitting there.
What would happen? I mean, you're elected for 4 years, right? So does that 4 years then start 2 weeks earlier and you're off the board?
If they so decide to do that, I suppose that would be a board's decision.
once again, I think there's confusion caused at the resolution committee level. The last paragraph says, in order to make it clear, we want this resolution to comply with other current law. Well, that's like an open-ended, what other law? Like the election code? You know, I mean, I struggle with the resolutions we're getting. So I'm gonna be a no.
Other,
What's the current wait period?
28 days.
So it's 14 days, it's just 2 weeks before.
Yep.
So that's one board meeting.
Well, if
One or two.
some boards only meet once a month.
They can wait.
But I mean, yeah, for us, it'd probably be at least one.
anyone else?
Could approve a superintendent hiring right before they seat the board.
That could be it.
Or a contract.
Yeah.
Mr. Rising, do you want to help us clarify?
Yeah, so again, this particular resolution, seating of new members, the resolution committee recommended to adopt that in a uncontested election, that board members may be affirmed or sworn in at the next regularly scheduled board meeting or special meeting held at least 14 days after the consolidated election. So if you vote yes, you're supporting. If you vote no, you're not supporting.
Jackie, please call the roll.
Mr. Carubus?
No.
Ms. Peel?
No.
Ms. Deming?
No.
Ms. Grover?
Yes.
Mr. Rasak?
No.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
No.
Okay, I think I did that right.
Yep.
The vote is 2 yes to support, 5 not to support. The board has chosen to not support resolution number 7, school board elections, seating of new members.
I move that the Board of Education approve the IASB Resolution Committee's recommendation of do not adopt of IASB Resolution 8 entitled School Board Elections Swearing In as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, Mr. Rising.
Yeah, I don't even know if we need to have much conversation about this. It's a local issue that was going on. They want to do some different things as far as swearing in of their board members. I don't know if we really need to have discussion.
Well, I'm confused about this. Will somebody help me?
Then we don't want to adopt it. Yeah, confusion means no.
So, you really want me to get into?
Like, in a minute or less, just help me understand what they're doing here.
Okay. So there was some, what's the best way to put it? There was some contentious elections going on in this particular school district. And the current board was delaying as far as when they were swearing in board members because they wanted to take care of some action. They didn't want new board members involved, and so the new board members wanted to be sworn in differently through other channels and means. That's essentially what this resolution is that board members can then be sworn in separately by either the Board of Education's president or designee or the clerk of one's county or any presiding judge. So it was a local issue that I think there was some contentious things going on there.
So do not adopt means,
Do
if
not
I
adopt.
say yes to that, that means we don't want people to go wherever they want to get sworn in.
Correct, yes. It's a position that IASB would take that our school board members in the state of Illinois say that school board members can get sworn in from other channels.
Okay. Got it.
So to vote, just to clarify, do adopt.
It says
if-
do
It's
not
do not
adopt.
I know, but our motion is to do adopt their position.
No,
No.
it is not.
Motion was to accept the committee's recommendation of do not adopt.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I was on the previous one. Okay. So everybody's clear.
Are we clear?
Yep.
Jackie, call the roll.
Mr. Carubus?
Yes.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
Aye.
Ms. Grover?
Yes.
Ms. Peel?
Aye.
Mr. Rasak?
Aye.
Ms. Deming?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to support the IASB recommendation of do not adopt for Resolution 8. Now move to Resolution 10.
I move that the Board of Education approve the IASB Resolution Committee's recommendation of do not adopt for IASB Resolution 10 entitled School Board Member Compensation as presented.
Second.
Motion and second, Mr. Rising.
Summary, Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and encourage legislation that will give school districts the authority to offer compensation to its school board members. That's it. Short and sweet.
Discussion.
I'll start the discussion.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
So, I know I brought up teacher shortage last year, or last time, 2 weeks ago. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the attacks on public schools overall for the last 20 years. the attacks on the unions, the attacks on their wages, framing it as if the folks who are in front of our kids don't deserve the salaries they get at times. And I really have come to the realization for me that some of this just comes from, one, how much does the society actually value children? And two, how much does our society actually value female workplace personnel? And since schools have constantly been female-oriented teachers and staff, I think, and I know this isn't the teachers, but I think it's kind of the archaic belief that the school system should somehow be a cheap and babysitter for our kids and not the education program it's meant to be, to raise citizens in our country who can vote and be leaders, be our scientists, and be anybody they want to be. So this is more philosophy on me for me to support this resolution, because I think it's time we start speaking about the value of education, and every other leadership position in our city gets some kind of a stipend. And I just kind of think the reason might be because there were more males in those areas than there are here in the education field. So I'm kind of taking a stand on that. I know this is a philosophical thing that I'm drawing a line into, but I think we need to start valuing education, and I think when we're looking at teacher shortages, we're going to have to start looking at who are the leaders too, and are we going to have leader shortages in the future? And I think a lot of our districts already do face that. And I think it's just because we don't somehow support education overall. So.
Other comments?
I'm going to be supporting this resolution. No. I'm against the resolution committee's recommendation of do not adopt. So I support school board members getting compensation. I don't take the general view on the school system. I view it more as we're fortunate here. We have the capacity to donate our time and resources to act as school board members, but there's plenty of community members that don't. And there's plenty of people that would like to run but can't, and there are empty spots for school board members across the state. So on that basis alone, any compensation would end up being minuscule to the amount of time that's placed in. But we want to expand the pool of people that can be school board members, and not just those with sufficient means to do so. So I support the resolution, and I'm against the resolution committee's recommendation.
Others?
I'll say I do appreciate the comments, and it was thought-provoking at our last meeting when you brought this up. I guess I thought a lot about it and still think after hearing your words now. But I do think that if they gave money, it wouldn't be anything that could sustain someone. So that logic that, you know, you'd get more people that would run if they got some stipend, I don't think that would really work. And I really want to see people involved with running for school boards who are doing it not because they're going to get some money for it, but because they really care about the kids in the district. So I won't support this. I'll support their position.
Others?
I think I'm having a hard time with this one. I see both sides of it, because a lot of school districts, the amount of work that goes in, it is like a part-time job, and for some people, it could be a full-time job. So if they sometimes have to give up their jobs and do this, so I see that part, but then on the other hand, are you, by paying somebody, it's a volunteer position, you want to do it because you want to do it, and so when you pay somebody, does it take out the reason or the gratification, or you're not doing it, you're doing it for the greater good? Does it take out the reason why you're doing it? So I'm having a difficult decision with this, because I see what you're saying, and I didn't think about the point about how it's a female-oriented profession, and whereas municipalities and city council, they have a stipend. So still haven't decided. So, I do.
Time's a
That's why I listen to everybody, and then I make my decision.
So,
Ms. Deming, then
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Rising.
I really appreciate Kathy's thoughtful comments regarding the nature of education in our country, and the domination often of females, and how that, even though, boards may look different, but the value that we ultimately place on education. And I spoke last time, not in favor of this particular committee, not in favor of this particular resolution from the proponent. And although you've made me think, I think I'm still feeling not to adopt it, but I think your comments certainly give us pause to think as a whole regarding how we continue to value education. I'm just not convinced that the minuscule compensation would convince people to run if they didn't want to do it at the beginning.
Mr. Rising.
yeah, so I don't know what the exact numbers are. I don't know if you looked them up, Kathy, or not, of male school board members versus female school board members, because I do see a lot of boards that are majority males too. So I'm not sure what that number is.
That's not the line, though. Yeah.
No, I don't know, did you find the data on it, or?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not saying that more boards tend to be more female. I'm just saying
Oh,
the
yeah.
institutions
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
I was not referring to the
Okay.
actual board members. I don't know that number.
I'm going to be deciding in the next 2 minutes too. So I will say, after this last election cycle, there was, we, the candidates, worked, I felt, as hard as I did my previous 2 elections combined for school board. I mean, we had 12 forums. It was borderline, ridiculous for an unpaid position. Now, having said that, I value this position with all my heart, and it was worth it for me because I care so much about this work, even though it is a voluntary position. What I want to prevent is people using this position as a school board member for a higher position. And I think oftentimes you see that throughout the state with state legislators, that they will use a school board position to reach a higher office. Now, no one can ever predict where life takes them, so I get that. But, I also don't like to see when that happens intentionally. Where I struggle with this is those areas that can't get candidates and they don't have people stepping up. And then I think to what Natasha said is that, thankfully a lot of us have flexibility in our professional lives that we can do this. Or we're lucky enough to be retired like Mike. But, it does take a serious time commitment. And at some point, you have to justify if that's worth being paid or not for the job you're doing. So my only biggest fear with this, and I keep reminding myself of what the resolution says of the position of IASB. It says that IASB shall support and encourage legislations that will give local school districts the authority to offer compensation to its school board members. So there's part of me that thinks what I don't want to see is a conflict of interest. There are people running for a conflict of interest, but I think if the boards are going to decide on their own compensation, I think they're going to have to answer to the voters for that if the legislation takes it up in the way the resolution's written, which may or may not happen. So, I don't know, I'll decide in a couple seconds here.
I have one more thought.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, it just strikes me too, it's like, and sitting on a board of a school district that runs on an extremely tight budget, like we're funded at, 80% adequacy, it's like, would you really carve out money to give to school? And I know it's an option whether or not to do it, but this is true across any school district, unless you're rolling in money. Would you really spend that money on compensating your school board than paying
kids.
for our lacrosse team or our STEPS kids or, things like that? So it's like I have a problem with using the money that way.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Ms. Peel.
One more small, I don't know. It usually is a small step, and I don't think our city council members are walking away with a salary that they could, would quit their day job for. And that was what I'm picturing. I guess some districts might choose to pay a full-time salary. I would have a hard time believing that too. But, I was, an active volunteering for many years before I got on the school board, and none of that was obviously compensated. And then I got on here and I was not compensated. I didn't expect to be, but the time and effort that this did take, sometimes I really did question. It would have been nice when my husband was out of a job if we had had insurance at least to cover it. So because there was some sacrifice there. I don't know. I know it's not enough money at all, and we're not even talking about that money, but I think it is the principle for me more than anything, that we need to in this country we value things by how much money we pay for things sometimes, and I think it's kind of interesting that we always find a way not to value something around education.
We've had great discussion, Mr. Rising. Can you clarify, the resolution is do not adopt, so?
So if we vote yes to do not adopt, that means we are against this resolution, right? Did I say that right?
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Say that again.
So the resolution is to encourage legislation to support local school districts' authority to offer compensation. Our motion, the resolutions committee's recommendation is do not adopt. Our motion is to approve.
No, was to do not adopt.
Is to approve, do not adopt.
Right, to approve the
Yes,
resolution
okay.
committee, do not adopt.
Okay, we've been at this
I
too
know.
long.
It's the longest hour. All right, so everybody's clear?
Yes.
We say yes, then it means we do not, we accept the committee's recommendation
Of
to
do
not.
not adopt.
Do not adopt.
Correct,
Yes.
perfect. Jackie, call the roll.
Mr. Karubas?
No.
Mr. Rising?
Yes.
Ms. Deming?
Yes.
Ms. Grover?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Razak?
Yes.
Ms. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Peel?
No.
So the board does accept the recommendation of do not adopt for resolution number 10. Finally, last but not least, is all the others, which we did not have an issue with. So I need a motion.
I move
Oh, go ahead.
that you do the motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the IASB resolution committee recommendations of do not adopt for IASB resolutions 2, business enterprises minority owned, 5, background checks, substitute teachers, 6, school safety, traffic zones, 9, school board elections, terms, 11, charter school, renewal of charters, 12, charter schools at-risk students, amended existing positions, 13 to 5.01, prevailing wage act, 14, 1.01, education programs, 15, 2.27, state authorized charter school funding, 16, 2.04, funding special education programs, 17, 2.04, funding special education programs and reaffirmation of existing positions, 18, 1.08, standardized test procedures, and 1.09, student assessment as presented.
There's a motion. Is
Second.
Motion and second.
I think Lori might have said do not adopt, so I just want to make clear
Oh,
that that
did
was
I?
do adopt.
On resolution 2
Oh,
was to adopt.
Yeah,
do adopt, yes.
okay. That's how it reads, so just want to make sure.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Jackie, call the roll.
Wait, I'm not ready. No.
Can you read it again, please?
Ms. Donahue,
Aye.
Ms. Peel,
Yes.
Mr. Rasak,
Aye.
Mr. Rising,
Aye.
Ms. Grover,
Yes.
Ms. Demming,
Yes.
Mr. Karubas.
Yes.
Is that everyone? Motion passes.
So just one last thing, if you do want me to speak about some of these, please just email me personally, and I'll compile some of that as far as what I say at the delegate assembly, like I did last time.
So
Nice job.
before we do our discussion, we were at our IASB DuPage dinner, and the leadership of IASB really implored boards to consider these resolutions. I know for a fact some do, some don't. I really appreciate the effort of every board member here. We took this seriously. Sometimes it seems long and drawn out, and it is a bit. But on the other hand, we did what was requested and should be required of every school board to look at the resolutions of the association that represents us in a considered manner. So I thank everyone on the board. Mr. Rising, thanks for all your work with this. So thanks. Now, we get to do some fun stuff. We get to learn about our English Learner Program and get an update. Welcome.
Thank you. We're happy to be here tonight to talk with you about our English Language Learning Program and our Developmental Bilingual Program. Sitting up here tonight to do the presentation, we have Rafael Segar, who is our Director of ELL Services, and Tracy Salick, who is our ELL Coordinator. These two work very hard to implement these programs and support teachers. And so they'll be talking a little bit about how that's done tonight with some statistics as well. This does align with Board Policy 6160 that does focus on English learners. So with that being said, we'll let them take it away.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be here tonight. Last spring when Dr. Sullivan mentioned that it was our turn to update the board, I was like, about time. It's been a couple of years, and I think that you guys will be excited to hear some of our statistics and such. So I'd like to start by covering over some basic information that I think it's extremely important in order to understand, because the world of ELL is full of acronyms. So as you can see in the current slide, ELL stands for the English Language Learning Program. That's the umbrella as a whole. But under that umbrella, we have two different types of services that we provide. ESL, which is English as a second language, all taught in English, and then bilingual education. Within bilingual educations, there is a variety of different services that can be provided for students. The first one is transitional bilingual education, and the title itself it's very explanatory. The goal is to transition a student from their native language into being fully English speakers. Then we have what's called a developmental bilingual program, which is an immersion program, much like a dual language program. The difference between the two is on a true dual language program, you would have half of the class that would be native English speakers and the other half being the target language. On a developmental bilingual program, we have all of the kids of the target language. So there are no English speakers involved in that process. We do offer developmental bilingual program here at our Georgetown Elementary School. And that runs kindergarten through 5th grade. And then we have followed that up through Fisher Middle School now, where we offer a couple of classes also in Spanish for those students that have been in that program previously. So in terms of terminology, as I mentioned, ELL stands for English Language Learning, where ELs are English learners. And the state had adopted the term of ELs a few years back and wanted to really focus on that because the focus is on students. So that's where you're going to see that. You will see LEP, which stands for Limited English Proficiency. That's a terminology that we see in our eSchool system. And then, of course, ESL is for English as a second language, TBE for Transitional Bilingual Education, and in our particular case, DBE for Developmental Bilingual Education. The consortium that runs and focuses on all of the assessment, the standards, the professional development as across the nation is called WIDA. Now, originally they started with 4 states that had adopted it, but then they kept adding states, and so they couldn't continue adding letters of the state, so they just left it at WIDA, and it stayed as WIDA. But currently there are 37 states throughout the country that use the WIDA standards. All right, so here's where we're at in our district, just to give you an understanding of our ESL program versus our bilingual program. In our ESL program, if you have at least one student in any given school, you must provide them ESL. Now, if you have up to 19 students that are of the same language, you are not required to provide bilingual services in that language. However, once you go past 20 of the same language, then that's when you must provide bilingual services to those students, regardless of the grade level that they are in. You will see that we offer ESL in all of our 33 schools, and that includes our Indian Plains. And for schools where we offer bilingual services, we have the Prairie Children Preschool, Brooks, Collishaw, Gombert, Georgetown, Longwood, McCarty, Watts, White Eagle, Granger, Fisher, Wabansie, and Matia Valley High Schools. Notice with the asterisk that those schools that have that are marked as such are schools where we offer more than just Spanish. While Spanish is our largest number of students that speak that particular language, does not necessarily mean that it is our largest population of ELs, which would actually be Asian. But you can see over at the preschool, at Collishaw, at White Eagle, and at Watts, we offer at least 2 or 3 different Indian languages, such as Telugu, Urdu, Hindi, and in some cases Tamil. So when I created this slide, I was telling Kathy, you know, I'm going to put 15 years here because when I came into the district 10 years ago, those were the figures I had to go by to measure how we were changing over time. And now, 15 years later, and you can see this is this current school year, how the type of services and the amount of languages and ELs that we have completely changed. As you know, our district population continues to go down, but our EL population continues to go up on a yearly basis. So we did offer back then ESL. Now we offer the whole gamut, ESL and bilingual, all the way pre-K to 12. Right now, officially, as of about 2-3 weeks ago, we eclipsed the 3,000 mark of EL students in our district, which is huge. We thought we were going to reach it last year, but we said, well, it won't be too long, and here we are. Back then, we had 29 staff members that took care of all of our district, and right now we're sitting at 87, and continues to grow. Then, if we are going to compare now these are also another few stats that you can see from our program, where the number of homes of EL students back then was 62. Right now we are at 77. In the asterisk, you can see 89. That is the total of different homes where we have a different language. They are not necessarily, so, there's 12, there's a discrepancy of 12. Those are 12 languages where they do not necessarily speak, are English language learners.
Right, that's the number of languages, not homes.
Correct. Correct. Those are the languages within the homes of ELs, and then I put an asterisk for the district. Then you can see the number of homes in which there is a language other than English spoken. And the percentages have grown by, 8% right there in that figure. And notice as well, again, that number is based off of our current population, which is a little lower than what it was back then. And then, of course, the number of ELs as of the end of last year was 2,950. Now, when we look at the difference between last year and this year, you can see our growth in population of ELs. You can see the growth in homes that speak a language other than English across the district. And then you'll notice that we have dropped 3 languages in the EL realm. But those are these languages that can come and go. There's just one student in the district that for some reason was this year in the district, and then next year they're not. So Tracy's going to give you a little background of what our numbers for the languages are.
Okay, so on the left-hand side, you can see, as Rafael mentioned, that there are 77 languages spoken throughout the district. On the left-hand side, you can see those. Spanish being our front runner, followed by Telugu, Hindi, Tamil, Urdu, Chinese Mandarin, Gujarati, Arabic, Marathi, and Malayalam. Last year when we looked at the data, we saw that we had 14 Indian dialects across the district, so many of our students have Indian dialects as their heritage language. Specific to our ELL students, on the right-hand side you can see that the first 3 languages are the same, with Spanish, Telugu, and Hindi being parallel to our district stats, followed by Urdu, Tamil, Arabic, Chinese Mandarin, Gujarati, Russian, and Malayalam. So the only language that is not consistent on both sides is Russian. And every year when we pull this information, a lot of our numbers just are off. Like things might be switched here and there. But for the most part, we're seeing the same languages in our top 10 as we look across probably like the past 7 years.
This data is literally effective as of the 25th of October. Very recent.
Right, and also as of the 25th of October, we've also added about an additional 15 students to our program, so that's how fluid it is. Okay, so for accountability, as you know, every year our English learners are required to take an English language proficiency assessment, which is administered in the months of January and February, and that is called Access for ELLs 2.0. Access stands for Assessing Comprehension and Communication in English State to State. Access is the acronym for that. Every year, our students are required to take this assessment, and this assessment has 4 components. It's the 4 language domains of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And I'm sure you know, but about 4 years ago, this assessment went from a paper-based assessment to an online assessment. So all students grades 1 through 12 test online, with the exception of kindergarten, which are still tested paper, pencil, one-on-one with the test administrator. For accountability, it's kind of interesting. This slide here shows that students that have a language other than English spoken in the home must be screened for ELL eligibility. And when students are screened, they have to, if they have a 5.0 or above on a 6-point scale, those students do not qualify for services. So any student that receives a score lower than 5 qualifies. So as you can see in that chart, 5 is kind of the key number. And you can see that levels 1, 2, and 3, those are students that are typically in our ESL and bilingual program. Also level 4, high-level English learners. Once they reach a level 5, those students exit the program and they are considered monitor students. The state requires that we monitor students for 2 years after they reach English language proficiency, and level 6 being our ultimate goal. And then, as I just mentioned, every year when our students test, they receive a composite score, which is a composite of all 4 language domains. The literacy score, which is reading and writing combined, is 70% of the composite, and listening and speaking combined is 30%. So the emphasis is on literacy. So students must score an overall of 4.8 to exit our English language learning program. And once they do, then again, as I mentioned, we monitor those students for 2 years. Additionally, we have one building, as Raphael mentioned, Georgetown Elementary, where our students are in the developmental bilingual program. Those students take the Logramos assessment in the spring. This is a test that assesses students' language proficiency in Spanish, and students in grades 1 through 5 take this assessment. It's normed reference, and it's comparing students against their peers across the nation. And currently, we are in our 4th year of implementation with the Logramos assessment.
So the next slide provides you data in terms of the amount of students that have actually tested at each level, the amount of students that actually exited, and then the percentile. Please note the bottom right-hand corner where the state average exit is 8.5%, and as a district totals, we are well above that because we are a high-performing district, something to be proud of. It's 11.5 percentages higher than the exit average of the state in terms of our student population. You will notice that the 2,667 is the total amount of students that tested at the elementary, and so on. The 2,570 is the total amount of ELs that were tested. The one key component here is we have 3,000 students, right? And it's where's the discrepancy there? Well, that's because our preschoolers do not test for this test. And we have about half of the population of the preschool is actually English learners. So that's why those numbers do not mesh with the 3,000 number.
Last year, when we received the access scores in May, we had each building do an analysis of their test results. And then what I did is Raphael and I compiled those analyses, and we were looking for trends between elementary, middle, and high school. And there was a very blaring trend that we saw across all 3 levels. The first being, and you can see that being the top box across all 3, is that our speaking scores tend to be the lowest, followed by our writing scores. As I mentioned before, about 4 years ago, our students started testing online, and that has created, I think, one of the challenges for students, because before they used to be with a one-on-one administrator, with someone they knew, someone asking them questions and scoring them. Now with it having gone online, the student is given a prompt on the computer and must record the response into a headset, and that answer or response is digitally captured and sent to DRC, which is our company that scores our responses. So we don't have any, I guess what I'm saying is there's a good part of this, and that the subjectivity is kind of taken out, but we've seen a decline in our speaking scores. So we're making that a focus, and our writing scores as well. Another strength that we saw across all 3 levels is that our students have solid receptive language skills, and that their listening skills were very adept. That was a trend across all 3. Some other noticeable variables in the elementary is that we're seeing that many English learners with IEPs are making minimal progress in some cases, and the majority of the students that exited are in the intermediate grades, which is pretty common. An additional middle school trend that was noticed is that our newcomer population had made significant growth, which is something to celebrate. So we are really happy to see that our students coming from other countries were making quite a bit of progress.
One last point I want to bring up on this, the recent directors meeting that just happened for the state, one of the biggest concerns of all directors across the state was that the speaking scores for everyone seemed to be lower. And therefore, the state is always looking at ways in which they can readapt and or look at the testing so that it can provide a more truer meaning of response from our students. So that is an area that they are focusing on looking at to see, because we know that our kids are probably going to pick up the listening and the speaking first. And so it can be kind of shocking to say, speaking-wise, why is it that the scores are lower when we know that they can actually pronounce words and say things properly, but maybe not necessarily read it and write it academically speaking.
So because of the areas of our lowest areas, we decided that our PD, our focus for professional development for this year, that we would target our 2 areas that seem to be the most challenging for our students. Number 1 being speaking, as we just mentioned. So every month, our ELL teachers convene the last Wednesday of the month for professional development. So between September and November, for those 3 months, we are targeting speaking activities that are very deliberate and very purposeful to help our students, not only with access, but because communication skills are important. And then January through April, our professional development will target the writing domain. And what we have decided to do is we are having our own teachers, we're having teacher-facilitated professional development, teachers volunteering to share their expertise on resources, apps, tech tools that they have found beneficial when for speaking and writing. So that is what we're doing right now for our professional development every month.
All right, updating us in instruction. Over the past 2 or 3 years, our staff has been really hard at work in looking at our curriculum and how can we review it to ensure that follows not only the state standards adopted, but through ELA, but also the WIDA and the Spanish language arts standards. So we've reviewed our Spanish curriculum for the elementary level. We have all, what happened here? There we go. We have reviewed our social studies curriculum in Spanish at the middle school for Fisher. And we have also reviewed our high school curriculum for ESL and for the social studies classes. In terms of resources for parents, we have a variety of activities that we offer our parents to ensure that they stay in touch and that we can provide them not only as much service as possible, but as much education as possible. The first one is ESL classes. We offer these classes completely free to our constituents, and they are partnered through College of DuPage, and they happen between September and July, and we do those at Wabansie Valley High School. During that time, we also offer a homework club where all parents can bring their kids that are school age to work on activities and or homework while their parents are taking some classes, because we know that the hardship of some of these parents of finding somebody to take care of their kids while they're going to class at night can make that a difficult situation for them. We have our Bilingual Parent Advisory Council, which we run 4 to 5 times a year. We do workshops. Our next workshop will be in December, where we will go over the access process, testing, and I will pretty much be providing parents with all the information of how to go about working with their children about the test. Our teachers do so, but it is also helpful when the parents can sit at home and turn the computer on and do some practice exercises, which are provided through WIDA. So we do that. We have our multicultural reading night in the spring, which is Mr. Razak's favorite activity, so he says. That's a fantastic event. If you have not had the opportunity to participate in this, I highly recommend you do. And if you want to be a volunteer reader in one of our stations, we will also welcome you in that regard as well. We do between 12 and 13 different languages of reading stations, including sign language. So it's just fantastic. Our kids get some rewards at the end, and we raffle some goodies for the kids too. And we give every kid that comes in through the door a free book as well, of their choice in a variety of languages they can pick. And then, of course, you're clearly aware of our Parent Diversity Advisory Council, which is also something that we work in conjunction with strongly. You know, all of the meetings that they have, at least actually more like 6 or 7 times per year, and we like to participate. They do the multicultural reading night in conjunction with us as well. So we partner up with them. Anytime they need anything, we'll work with them, and vice versa. As for resources for teachers, we offer ESL cohort program here through St. Francis University, and actually yours truly, Tracy here, does the instruction at the time. At one point, I retired. So we're currently in our 6th cohort of that group, and it's great because we have a lot of teachers that have gone through this cohort that have actually ended up teaching in our department. And so it's a great way to foster our own teachers to expand their wings. We also have new training for gen ed teachers. We do this through the new teacher induction and throughout the year. ESL and bilinguals teachers provide some of that training, as well as Tracy and myself, and we can do that in a variety of ways. I know that through the Academy for New Teachers, they do that throughout the year as well. And then we also have new ELL training for our new teachers to the department, and we do this 4 times a year, and Tracy provides this training for them, and this gets them up to speed on all of the ins and outs, because in our department there is a lot of forms. There's a lot of nuances that we need to make sure we stay on top of, just so that we can be in regulation with the state. I think this, last but not least, I wanted to make sure I touched up on the seal by literacy, which is one of the fantastic programs we have. If you can see that that chart there, the state of all of the states now, pretty much with the exception of the 2 states that are in white, every state has either adopted the seal or are in the process of adopting the seal of biliteracy. When we first started the seal here, we had a total of 49 students that obtained the seal of biliteracy. At the time, we only offered the seal, and last year we took on the commendation as well. We were just getting our feet wet, and we wanted to make sure we were doing it right. And once we got all that taken care of, In our third year of implementation last year, we had 92 students that actually attained the seal of biliteracy, and 45 attained the commendation of the seal of biliteracy. The languages that you see in blue are the languages that we originally offered. Since then, we have expanded and now offer the seal of biliteracy in these other languages of Hindi, Russian, Japanese, Korean, Arabic, Polish, and Hebrew. And, you know, this is a feel-good slide. And with that, I am going to open it for any questions you may have for us.
Questions, comments? Ms. Deming?
Can you share a little bit about what exactly the seal of biliteracy means? I'm not as, I mean, I've been hearing about it, but can you share
Sure.
exactly
So
what
the
that
seal of biliteracy is it's a recognition that every student can be afforded to that goes through high school, where they can prove that they are proficient in more than one language. This is beneficial not only for their career after school, because it can help them in the job force, but also through colleges. There are certain colleges that will accept the seal of biliteracy as a medium for bypassing certain classes, if you will, which saves the kids a little bit of money. And then they have to meet a certain criteria, which is mid-high level of that language in order for them to qualify. And then they have to prove it clearly in 2 different languages, not only in English, but also in any of those languages that I had on the previous slide before.
Is that verbal or
It,
just
it
verbal?
tests all 4 domains.
Okay.
It tests all 4 domains.
Okay.
We know that in the English portion, for example, if the students that take the SAT, that score can count. And I'm not sure that they actually speak, but they have to. They are able to provide their proficiency in that language there. They also, English language learners, if they have passed the access test, if they have literally exited within their high school years, that will count as them showing proficiency in English, because we knew that they didn't have that proficiency to begin with. And then they can then show their proficiency in the other languages. We have many students that have gone that route, and then they take their native language test to prove that they have that skill in their native language as well.
And Raphael, isn't their seal on their transcript?
Yes.
It
So
is.
that's
The
placed on their
seal is not
transcript.
only on their transcript. We also put it on their diploma.
Okay.
We actually purchased it as an imprint.
Stamp.
It's a stamp. It's really nice stamp in there, and we, depending on the diploma from each of the 3 high schools, where it goes, but we have a little spot for them there. Yeah.
And then I just had a second question. When you were on slide 16 and we were talking about social studies curriculum in Spanish for middle school, and I had a question. The goal, you mentioned Fisher and talking about their program in being taught. What is the goal for those students as they leave middle school? Are they?
Well, the goal from the get-go is to ensure that we are educating kids that can be fully bilingual.
Okay.
Not only literally through literacy, but through speaking and listening, but that they can take those skills all the way to high school and beyond. So when we started with our developmental bilingual, which is a form of a dual language, it's an immersion program, we're only going through 5th grade. When we got that first class that actually graduated 5th grade through that program and they went into 6th grade, then we wanted to expand that opportunity for them to be able to receive more instruction so that they wouldn't lose everything that they gained up to 5th grade. So we ensured that those students were, with parental approval and permission, that they were taking the Spanish for Spanish speaker course, so it's a more advanced Spanish. And then we created the social studies as another avenue for another language, for another class that they could receive in the same language. It's the exact same curriculum of our social studies for all 3 levels in the middle school. It's just we're providing it in Spanish.
So through the developmental program, they start at kindergarten with a certain percentage of time is spent in their native language and a smaller percentage at English. And as they move through the grades, that flips.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
expands.
they get to 50-50 by fourth grade. And then by maintaining the 2 extra classes through middle school, hopefully that will continue to polish their language. When they get to the high school, not only could they go automatically into AP type of testing to take care of those languages, but also they could try to be trilingual. You know, a lot of these kids will take a third language, will go into French, because once you get that knowledge and the ability to learn that second language, the transition to a third language is even better.
Thank you.
Could you, what was the difference between the commendation and the seal then?
So in the commendation, they don't reach the mid-high level of proficiency in the language. They reach a mid-level.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so
So
I was
it's
thinking it
students
was
that,
higher.
let's say, yes. So a commendation to the seal, a student may be able to provide in the 4 domains high proficiency in speaking, high proficiency in listening, but perhaps the reading or the writing skill was not at the mid-high level. So they didn't quite reach that. But it is important that they get recognized because they have put a lot of effort into all of this. Most of our kids that are in AP courses currently at all 3 high schools tend to test for the test.
Okay. I had a question about the
Logramos.
yeah, say that one again.
Logramos.
So the reason for using that, what was the reason for you bringing that about?
So the same way that we test our kids with PARC to see how their achievement is going through the school years in English, we need to have a measurement by which we can assess whether our program and what we're doing is successful and whether our students are gaining the necessary instruction so that they can be successful. So when our students are able to perform above a 50th percentile, we know that they're scoring above a 50th percentile of the entire country in that language in particular. So there's a variety of different tests that are out there. It just so happens that the Logramos directly correlates with the same test that we use for when we test our kids for advanced courses in English.
Okay, so it reinforces their ability to stay bilingual throughout.
Absolutely, and then it can also give us some clues as to these are clearly native speakers that may not be at a higher level. Is there something that we need to look at as a reason for why that is, or those are the kids that we need to focus
Right.
a little more on for those language skills.
Okay. That's all my questions.
You're welcome.
Others?
So, first of all, let me just compliment your team, Raphael and Tracy. You guys have done a phenomenal job. I think, Raphael, we started at the same time. I think I was on the board right around the time you came to the district. Wonderful job you guys are doing in adapting and helping our EL or ELL students. With the Logramos, I like that the focus is on the speaking, the writing, and the listening, but what I didn't hear you talking about a lot is the reading part. And that's, and again, this is a conversation for another time, but we know the greatest success for all our students is reading. And I know there is that component of Logramos, but, we need to make them be able to communicate, right? So I understand the focus of the speaking and the writing. Maybe another time I'd love to hear the part about the reading too, because
Well, and just so you know, just as a point of reference, that test also talks about, assesses reading.
Yeah,
We
no.
assess kids in all 4 domains at every level of everything we do. It just so happened that when I was speaking about, I didn't mention reading.
Yeah,
But
no,
yes, and I'd love to talk to you more about it.
yeah, and I totally get that, but then I look at our data and I realize only 20% or 21% of our EL students are proficient in ELA. So Again, I'm not, this is not to say anything negative. You guys are doing amazing work because this is a very difficult area to help these students. So I think you're doing tremendously. I would just like to learn more, especially on that reading part. Sometime maybe I can even come and talk to you guys.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
We look forward to that. And I want to emphasize, I apologize, I want to emphasize that you said, that we're doing a great job. I passed the buck on to my teachers and Tracy. Our teachers are truly the inspiration for our students. They are the hardest workers, and they do such a tremendous job. They are what make our team look good.
And you actually made me think of something else, and I can always talk to Doug about this too, but is there certain certifications that our EL teachers need to have?
Absolutely.
Because I guess that my next question was, are those teachers difficult to come by as well? I would assume.
Well, for bilingual languages, yes. Particularly those second and third different languages, such as the Asian languages. Spanish is not as hard, but it is still challenging because a lot of districts around us, as you know, are providing these type of services as well. So we find ourselves competing for the best teachers available. ESL-wise, we have such a great staff in the district, 204 as a whole. And they have been able to gain all that knowledge through our cohorts or on their own. And so, yeah, they are getting certified, and we must hire people that are completely certified in all those areas.
Those cohorts that Tracy does a lot of the teaching, we grow our own ESL teachers. So that's, it's mainly our teachers that spend that time to get that endorsement, and it's mainly Tracy teaching them about how things work in our district, as well as what is appropriate across the state and nationally. So it's a grow your own program.
Others?
I asked you about the dual language program, and I know we've had people come up and speak about it before. I was on a committee when we were first talking about it and thought we were going to go full head, and I know it turned out to be something that didn't make sense for our district. And so my question was really, is that still true? Have you considered dual language, and is that, even though our numbers are a little higher, I know it's a complicated program, but is that where we're at, or is this something you're at all thinking about in the future?
We haven't recently explored the cost of that or the cost for implementation of that, if that's something that you'd like for us to take a look at.
I don't know if it was really cost as much as complex and how it would work.
Right, across the district, to implement it across 21 schools, or to pull kids from their home school to go to it. Some of those factors are important to note as we look at that, as well as the cost of doing that. So, there are a couple of stops and starts there during some of those austere times, but if that's something we want to take a look at, we could do some research on that as well.
Yeah, my recollection of that, Ms. Peels, it was right a little bit after the economic downturn.
Oh, I know. I was on the committee and I was on the board.
And it's not only a cost factor, it's a commitment factor from my perspective. If a district decides to do this, and I would like to look at it just to see, but again, we're 80% funded. But you're talking anywhere from 5 to a 12-year commitment. So when a board makes that commitment, you can't back down from that commitment, because children and parents have decided that this is how they want their education to look like. So it's important to look at both the cost and can we do it on a long-term basis.
And space.
Probably, yeah.
And that, I guess, and yeah, I'm seeing that. Is there a desire, I guess, on the part of our English language learner department that would say this would be something they would want to look at and feel like it may benefit if the cost benefit made sense? So I guess that's the question I have.
Well, if I may,
I don't know.
Dual language program truly is the Cadillac of bilingual education. But please note that the developmental bilingual program that we run at Georgetown, it is truly a dual language program in all its components, from the percentages of the classes we provide in one language that switches from year to year to the fidelity of the instruction and the classes and all of that. It's just that it is not a 50% of the students being from the opposite language.
Right.
So while we are providing those services, yes, clearly it is a worthwhile program, but the district's logistics are something that we must actually look at
Right.
very deeply for committing.
And it's a parent commitment, and even with the developmental bilingual program, we don't have as many families committing to that as when we first started as well. So it's, there's a temperature that needs to be taken of that as well.
Okay.
Ms. Grover.
I wanted to thank you for your presentation.
You're very welcome.
I like the way you think about not just the kids, but their parents too, because then the parents can learn the language and talk to the kids. I was interested in your monitoring, because you talked about how 2 years later you monitor the kids. So especially in middle school, say they exit and you monitor them for 2 years, have you noticed, have they been able to take honors courses or AP courses, or how, is there a trend how they are doing in high school?
All right, so two things with the monitoring program. The state requires that there is a monitoring process of 2 years after a student exits. That monitoring process is based of the EL teacher having conversations and gathering data via paperwork with the classroom teacher of the former EL for twice a year to ensure that the student is participating in the regular gen ed classroom without a hitch, based on language proficiency, not on skill academically, but on language proficiency, okay? So we have to, by law, maintain a record of these students for 2 years after the fact, monitoring them. If by any chance we were to find that there's a mishap with a student where they may either be stepping back a little bit or whatever, then we would bring in the parent and have that conversation. This might continue. We would bring in the parent and have a conversation with them about what are the possibilities of us exploring. How can we look at their progress and see if it truly is language related or not. In terms of the progress of our former ELs, the good news, based on some preliminary information I have, is that our students, our former EL students, are one of the highest performing students in the district in terms of data in the 90th percentile. But these are preliminary studies that I have been speaking with a colleague, so I need to get more data on that so that we could maybe extend that conversation later.
Others? I have a question. In the old days when I was principal, I was told that it took 7 years. Research said that it takes 7 years to fully acquire the language. So has it changed?
7 to 10. 7 to 10. However, important to note that on the average within the state, students tend to exit between 5 and 7 years. In our district, the average student exits after 3 years.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive.
Do you
but
put that
you-
to support of parents, or do you?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. You got to give credit where credit is due.
yeah.
And our Asian population does exit quite faster than our Hispanic population.
So in my reflection, as I saw that you were going to prepare, I always go to the mission statement,
Of course you do.
which is to inspire all our students to reach their greatest potential. And you have this presentation in which we have 77 languages. We have 7,173 homes that speak a different language.
and you begin to understand that education in District 204, probably education across America, a little bit to Ms. Peel's point here about undervaluing education, how complex it is. It's really complex. And you would think that what's simple, and you hear these numbers, and it starts to make sense that this is not education. That is like, we just do it one way for all our kids. We do it in a number of ways in order to make our kids successful. So I just want to thank you and, as you said, your staff, because I've seen them work. I see with joy and amazement how much progress kids make in a very short period of time. So I think Tracy wanted.
No, I just said, I just was reading some research, and they said by the year 2025, 1 in 4 students in the United States will be English learners, which is just amazing.
Wow.
'Cause right now, we're at about 10% across the state, and so it's going to go up to 25 in the next 5 to 6 years. So we find it's important for us to equip our teachers for the students that are entering our schools and our classrooms. So that's what we're devoted to.
Wow.
Anything else? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
We now move to the update portion of the agenda. The updates allow us as board members just to fill each other in on what's going on. It also gives us an opportunity to inform our community on what's going on. So superintendent search. Today was the closing day for applicants. I've talked to Ray and associates several times in the last couple of weeks. Applicants still keep pouring in, so that's good. They want to be with us. In November, we will start weeding down our applicants, evaluating them for a fit for our district. We are working on our dates. It looks like in early December, we will have our first round interviews. I will confirm those dates. You gave me the dates that you're available, so I will get those to you for first round interviews. And hopefully very quickly after that, perhaps the next week, we will have a few applicants and a second round. It looks like that we can be done with our work before winter break. So at this point, we had a calendar and projected that we can do it. So far, we are on task in order to achieve that. So keep on looking. I will be sending possible questions, and we will need to develop our first and second round interviews. Legislative advocacy. Several of us attended, and I'm sure everybody watched the summit that was held on October 25th. The summit was led by LUDA, EdRed, and LEND. Those organizations are educational advocacy groups, and basically this area, 2 legislators, one from the Senate, one from the House, and our own Aristelianis from Franzik were on the dais and talked about the property tax relief force. Briefly, there's 80 members of our legislators that are on this task force. They have 8 committees that are important: assessment and exceptions, government consolidation, social and economic disparities, pensions, school funding and property tax, PTEL and local governments, tax levy, and TIF districts. I left that meeting, and I don't know, others can, feeling that all is not settled with those 88 legislators. Legislation regarding board reserve funds, that's kind of a new topic. Pension cost shifts, TIFs, tax cap limits, and possible tax freezes seem to be still all on the table. To use the words of one of the speakers, and this is underestimation, the property tax structure is extremely complicated. I would kind of agree. They all said they thought the legislators would do something, but what would be done is unclear. And so, as a result of that, I think we need to be vigilant in watching our legislature, because we might need to continue to educate them. So others were there or watched it. I don't know if anybody wants to have a brief comment.
I would, the only thing I would say is, I mean, I don't think anything, a revelation is gonna come out of that report, but what I was encouraged by is that a lot of these legislators who, to me, previously didn't understand how property taxes work, or how schools are funded, or that type of thing, I felt a lot of them got more in-depth knowledge, so I was encouraged by that.
Anybody else?
No, I think you did a good summary. I think a lot is up in the air.
Another update, I want everyone to know, and I think you know, that our district has been actively engaged in conversation with the city of Aurora officials, especially in regards to the proposed TIFs. As we have shared with our community, our board is really aware of the impact of TIFs on our school districts and on our stakeholders. We all know that our oath of office, the first thing in our oath, dictates that we shall respect taxpayer interest, and by serving as faithful protectors of our district's assets. Our board is really very aware of the city's desire for economic growth. Please know that we welcome all economic development that seeks to improve our community, but we will oppose any TIF that seeks to erode the property tax base needed to educate our students. We really thank the city of Aurora for continuing to have discussions with us and being transparent. We have another meeting this week, and we are hopeful we can reach an agreement that is beneficial to all parties. So we will continue to keep our community informed and send good wishes to everyone that we can work through this. Next, board education update. As you know, we are presenting on Saturday, September 23rd, to IASB. We will be practicing tomorrow our presentation. Our room theoretically holds 350 people.
Theoretically?
Well, it does. I'm just hoping that.
It's a big theoretical.
The theoretics are, will 350 people show up to our presentation? But we need to be prepared no matter what. Finally, just so the board is aware, I have met with 3 presidents from school districts who are similar to us. Today's meeting was kind of reflective of the kinds of conversations we had about legislation, about the resolutions, about IASB, about the state of Illinois, and we hope to continue to work together because we think that advocacy among many different school districts might serve us well, so I will continue to keep the board updated on that. Anything else for the good of the group?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.